Hi, everyone. My name is Charlie Minato. I am with halfwheel.com, and I'm here in our office in Dallas, Texas. To my right, and I guess to your right as well, on the screen, is Brooks Whittington. Brooks, how are you today?
Oh, I'm doing wonderful. Didn't get any hail today, thankfully, or yesterday. I guess you didn't get any down here either, but I'm not far enough north. Apparently people in Denton got nailed with hail.
Cool. People in Denton having lots of fun last night, according to Brooks Whittington. Read more about it on halfwheel.com later today. So other things that you'll be able to read about on halfwheel.com later today, and you've been reading about all this week, have been things related to the 2024 PCA Convention and Trade Show, and this is one of two preview shows that Brooks and I are going to do. We'll be back here again on Tuesday, but more about that in a second. I guess I kind of screwed up the ordering here for it. So today's show is about what is PCA 2024, and we're also going to go over some big questions. There are some major changes for this year's show. I think probably more so than any other trade show, PCA trade show that I've covered, where it's going to look a lot different compared to the year before. I guess maybe the 2020 show, if it had happened as planned, that would have been the Cigar Con show, the first show where it was called PCA, etc. That would have been a bigger change, but it did not happen. So this year will certainly mark the sort of largest change from year to year, and we're going to get to what those changes are and also to some big questions that we have. If you have questions, we will answer some of them, maybe 2 or 3 of them at the end of the show. So leave a comment on Facebook and YouTube. If you are on Instagram watching this, that is cool, but we cannot see your comments, so we will not be able to answer them, at least not during the show. So as I mentioned, we will be back again on Tuesday, March 19th, to talk about the 10 products that we're looking forward to. That is an annual tradition. Brooks and I will each select 5 products individually, and we will talk about each of the 5 of them, so a total of 10 products. And then on March 29th, I believe this is the first time we're ever going to do something like this, we're going to have a recap show. So the trade show runs not this weekend, but the next weekend. So Saturday, March 22nd through Monday, March 25th. No, Saturday, March 23rd through Monday, March 25th. I believe that's correct. And we will be back here in Dallas later that week. So on Friday, the 29th, we will have a live show. Is that the right? Yeah, I guess that's the right date. All right. Anyway, now that I've confused myself. Brooks, what cigar are you smoking?
Today I'm smoking Jorge de Nicaragua Numero Uno from 2000.
Which size?
And
what size are you smoking?
18.
Size?
The size is the Lonsdale called the Le Tache.
That is
Le Tache. Le Tache?
I don't think just because you're saying it faster and in a different tone, it makes it French. I think you're also skipping a syllable, like attaché, I think is probably.
Is there no L in there? Is the L silent?
Well, there is, but I'm saying in the thing that begins with an A and a T, it's attaché, not attaché.
It's a Lonsdale.
Yeah, I'm smoking the Leroy Neiman Collector's Edition, the one from this past year. I suppose the JC Newman is supposed to be announcing the second Leroy Neiman cigar shortly. It's supposed to be at the PCA Convention and Trade Show. And that leads us to the logical question, which is, what is PCA 2024? So, Brooks, if you're going to bring someone along that's never been to this thing before, and you bring them along Saturday morning, what are they going to see when they walk in the doors?
Well, you're going to see a number of different booths, some large, some small, and some really huge and some, fairly tiny. But there's a huge number of different booths, and they're all over the place. And, they're there to make sure that they're showing off their wares, very, very well. This year, there's a nice layout, I think. Could be some issues with it, but for example, you've got the BCA pavilion up in the top right, along with a putt course in the top left there. Watch that, it's cool. But you can see that it's laid out in a fairly general way in terms of how to get around.
General way.
Well, I mean, I don't know if it's a good way or not, a bad way, but it's it's an okay way, I guess. But regardless, there's some larger booths here. You can see the Drew Estate booth is fairly big. The Gurkha booth. When you're looking at these booths, somebody like what's the first one we've got coming up? HVC. So you've got an HVC booth, which is it's a smaller brand, and he's got his wares there in a fairly it's a nice layout, easy to see. But then you go to someplace like Rocky Patel, for example, who has this booth here, and it's a much larger booth. His products are all over the place. This is a video that was shot by Brian, I believe. So you've got he's got his cigars in different places there around the booth. People are sitting there doing business in couches and things of that nature. You've got all these different retailers and some media perhaps, and probably some people from Rocky Patel there as well, I would imagine. But as you walk through, you can see it's a fairly large booth, and there's not many of those that size in the actual convention. But the ones that are that size certainly take advantage of the space that they have in different ways. There's Boveda on the top left there, and it's laid out very, very interestingly. This booth here with the boxes and new products all over the booth instead of in one specific place.
Yeah, so if you didn't pick up on it, PCA 2024 is a trade show. It is not open to the public. It is not a consumer event. It is for people in the cigar industry, primarily for cigar retailers, but cigar media, as Brooks mentioned, will be there, as well as suppliers. So the people that make the boxes and bands for a lot of companies will show up. People that help with shipping and anything else kind of related to the cigar process, from people that sell ashtrays to the people that sell the POS software that your local store may or may not use. So if you're in the industry, the reasons as to why you may care about this show, they obviously differ depending on what kind of job you have. But again, this is primarily for retailers. And it's primarily paid for by manufacturers. So if you're a retailer or manufacturer, the reason why you care is because primarily of the discounts. Historically, especially like a decade ago, this trade show would be clearly either the best or the second best deals, so wholesale discounts that cigar companies would give to their customers, cigar retailers. That is less and less the case these days. The sales still may be the most or second most aggressive sale of the year. What is very different, though, is that there are now a lot more sales throughout the year in ways that I don't think there were 10 years ago. And also, there are a lot of companies that will offer either identical discounts or very similar discounts to retailers that do not attend the trade show, which did not used to be the case. The second reason why, and the reason why people like us and media really care about PCA 2024, is because this is the week where there will be more new products announced than any other week of the year. And that will remain true next week, or however you want to look at it, right? So there will be a lot of new products. I think we're going to have a debate about whether there will be as many new products as sort of historically during the trade show, but there will be many, and probably need to remove the Duolingo advertising there. And then the third reason, which I think applies to sort of everyone that shows up to the trade show, which is that this is the largest gathering of people, especially in the American cigar industry, in the world. So there will be more people involved in the American cigar industry in Las Vegas next week than at any other point or time and place throughout the year. And that is a very, very large reason as to why people show up to this trade show. I think it's kind of an undervalued reason as far as how the organizers approach this, but it is a big, big deal. And even for us in media, I think if there were fewer new products, we would still show up to this trade show. We show up to other trade shows where there's less new products because it's nice to see people and sort of catch up and get some leads on stories and follow up on things and things like that. If you are a consumer, which you most likely are, just sort of statistically speaking, the reason why you should care is probably only related to new products. Most retailers, brick and mortar retailers especially, do not pass on the discounts that they get from their suppliers to you. So they do like to pass on the price increases, but when they get a deal, they oftentimes don't pass it on to you. Obviously, events and like holiday deals and things like that, they do, but they're probably not going to give you the same sort of savings they're getting. But they will gladly sell you, or some of them will gladly sell you, the new products that are shown off during PCA 2024. So I think that the last sort of part of this is that the PCA itself is not just a trade show, though if you're a consumer, you probably are mostly familiar with it, the acronym referring to a trade show. It stands for the Premium Cigar Association. It is an actual trade organization primarily geared towards brick and mortar cigar retailers, though depending on the day of the week, they might claim they represent other people or make that a big focus. But historically, it has been about brick and mortar cigar retailers, and I would say that that is still primarily where their focus is today. The PCA likes to tout how the proceeds of this trade show go towards funding their efforts to fight back cigar regulation and things like that. That is true. I would say it's over-exaggerated, which is an unnecessary word there, but it certainly is an exaggerated amount. I think most people think the PCA it's more than they do from this trade show. The reality is that most of the money the PCA gets, or maybe not most of it, but a large chunk of it goes to putting on this trade show. It is a very, in my opinion, at least inefficient way to fund cigar regulatory fights to attend this trade show. I think you're better off just donating to organizations like the PCA, the CRA, the CA, or even local state organizations. But that's probably for a different conversation. But it is important to note that there are things beyond just the trade show that the PCA does, especially when it comes to like state advocacy issues. They are oftentimes, depending on the state, very involved. Now that we've gotten that out of the way in a pretty succinct fashion here, we are going to get to some of the changes. So, Brooks, do you want to talk about the first big change for PCA 2024?
Yeah, so historically, and ever since I've been covering the show, at least, for the most part, I don't remember a time when it wasn't, typically done in summer, July or August. And it's usually held in those summer months, and now it's been moved to March, end of March. In fact, the last day is my birthday, in fact, 49 years old. So it's a huge change, and it makes a number of different, it has a number of different impacts on different parts of retailers and manufacturers and how they approach things going into the show. For us, at least, it's a big deal because pretty much everything that we have to cover in terms of events and trade show, other trade shows, things like this are all they're really condensed into the first 3 months of the year. And it was nice for us to be able to actually have that break before PCA started. And so now we have TPE and Pro Cigar and Pure Sabor and Habanos Festival and all of these things all at once, basically within the first 3 months. But the date change is a big deal, and it's something that for us at least it's a big deal. For retailers, it's a big deal for various reasons. Yeah, big deal.
Yeah.
And next year they have it in April, correct? In New Orleans, so it's not quite as early.
Correct.
Yeah.
I think that the biggest question with the date change is what it does to sales, because that is the most important thing at the end of the day. And I know that a lot of, particularly the larger manufacturers, are very concerned about the date change, and it's specifically how it sort of affects the sales cycles and sort of the ratio or the formula between the amount of orders that a retailer will place with a specific manufacturer over the course of a calendar year. There's a belief that that number is going to decline in 2024 because of the calendar changing. We will see if that plays out, but I do know that that is a large concern amongst the bigger players in the industry. There's also there are a number of changes. The second one that we'll get to is that there are only going to be 3 days of this trade show instead of 4. Historically, the trade show has taken place Saturday, Sunday, Monday, and there's been a partial day on Tuesday that ends a bit early. The reality is that attendance falls off every day that the show goes on. There is a noticeable difference between days 1 and days 2. I would say there's a pretty large difference between days 2 and days 3. There is a very large difference between days 2 and day 4. I don't know if the difference, honestly, between the end of day 3 and the start of day 4 is really all that noticeable. There's a linear decline in attendance each and every year. That has led to a lot of exhibitors in particular saying that they don't see any value of being on the trade show floor for the 4th day. And the PCA has rightfully taken their advice and gotten rid of the 4th day. For media, we are probably the only segment of the trade show that is not necessarily fond of this because it means that we'll have fewer hours on the trade show floor to cover the new products. But I think despite the fact that it might hurt us and our media compatriots, I do think this is the right decision. The day 4 has long been maligned. I do think that the better change would be to move the actual days of the week. I think having the trade show run Tuesday through Thursday would be very smart, but I understand some of the hesitations. I think that changing that would really help, but not my show. Brooks, there's one more change happening this year, or one other notable change. You want to talk about that?
Yeah. So this year they are having the convention at the Las Vegas Convention Center. In the last few years, 5 years, it has been held at the Sands Expo Center, which is part of the Venetian. I believe the last time that they had it at the Las Vegas Convention Center was in 2018, and it's. The convention center specifically is not a bad location to have it as far as I'm concerned. But there is one big difference in terms of how it's approached by the people who are actually attending, and that is the fact that all of the people who attend like to hang out. As you mentioned before, they like to hang out. They like to see each other. And the problem is, without a host hotel site like the Venetian, for example, the people who are at the convention.
Keep going.
People who are at the convention don't have a specific place to actually hang out at the end of the day, and that's a big deal. There's not a place, there's not a feeling that can replicate the idea of having everybody under one roof when you're talking about everybody in this hotel that you can go to and just go downstairs. They have it at the Circle Bar there at the Venetian when it's there. And there's no place like that here. And so I think it is going to be a big deal in terms of that. One of the big reasons, as Charlie mentioned, that people come is to hang out. I'm not sure where this mythical hangout is going to be, but somebody will choose somewhere, but it's certainly I think, will not be as well attended as it has been in years past when you can just walk downstairs and there you are.
Yeah, I don't know how it's going to make a difference, sort of as a one-off, but I do think that if the trade show were to happen at the LVCC for consecutive years, I do think that there would be some attendees that would probably stop attending as they lose out on their social hour. I mean, the reality is that a lot of these retailers, I don't know what the percentage is, but certainly more than like 2% of them don't really do a lot of business at the trade show. They're more really just here to see people and see their friends at the quote unquote Circle Bar. For them, if that experience isn't going to be there, they're not going to be apt to come. And I know for a lot of the exhibitors, especially a lot of the decision makers at the exhibitors, they really do care about the social experience. And it's curious to see. I think it has been undervalued immensely. But next year is probably going to be even worse, if we're being quite honest, in New Orleans. So those are 3 big changes, and we're going to get to now 5 big questions. Well, the questions, most of them I think are not too wordy. So let's get to question number 1, which is the topic that everyone likes to talk about at the trade show. It is attendance. There is a big question. I think the reason why this trade show moved from July to March is because the PCA has heard complaints amongst the people that go about how hot it is in July. I don't really understand that since the trade show takes place entirely indoors, but it is what it is, and there's probably no sort of perfect time to host this trade show. There's also a question of whether or not the fact that it is so close to what is probably now its largest competitor or its most direct competitor in TPE, which took place at the end of January, also at the Las Vegas Convention Center, as well as just sort of the general frenzy over attendance. Brooks, before you answer this, I would just like to point out that, as I did a couple years ago, attendance is a topic that loves to get talked about at this trade show. Part of that is that the PCA, the IPCR before it, which is the old name of this organization, has done, I would say, a very haphazard job of tracking attendance. For example, at Intertabac, which is the international trade show that takes place in Germany each September, they scan badges. And in doing so, when you scan the badge, you know exactly how many people have entered each day, and you can give very detailed data about how many people entered. In fairness to PCA, TPE does not scan badges, but if you really wanted to know how many people attended the trade show, the obvious answer would be to scan the badges. Instead, they don't, and then they put out numbers, and the numbers oftentimes don't seem to correlate to people's feelings about how the show might have been attended, and that leads to a lot of discussions about attendance. But the truth of the matter is that attendance, as long as you're not getting into the extremes, right, as long as it's not going up by 50% or down by 50% or more, it doesn't really matter. 10, 15% each year fluctuation, it is what it is. It very clearly isn't going to change the behavior of the exhibitors for the most part, though some of them have shrunk their booths. It's not going to change the behavior of fellow retailers. It's not going to change the behavior of the media, right? And also, this trade show probably should be in decline. The brick-and-mortar cigar category is not what it was 10 years ago, and that is who is primarily being catered to with this trade show. That being said, Brooks, if you had to guess here, end of day one at the trade show, and someone asks you the inevitable question, they say, Brooks, how does attendance look like on the show floor? I'm only in my booth, and it's been so busy here, I haven't had a chance to walk out of it once. So what does it look like on the rest of the show floor? What do you think it's going to look like as far as you're concerned?
I think it's going to be about the same. I don't think we're going to notice a huge difference. In terms of total numbers, I think that it may go down a little bit, may go up a little bit. Like you said, it's a very small amount. It's not gonna be that big of a deal either way. I do know that the retailers that I've talked to from the north love the idea of having it at the in this time of year. They have time now where there's not as many people smoking, not as much business coming in, so they can actually come down and actually enjoy the festivities as opposed to missing out on a major part of their business when they're in the summer months. So we may get some more from the north, people from the north that actually come down, but I don't think it'll be a huge difference either way, to be honest with you.
Yeah, I would suspect it will be slightly the same. It's probably going to be slightly up, right? But I think the problem is that if you look at the numbers that are on the screen right now, I have a very difficult time believing that the 2023 trade show was better attended than the 2018 or 2019 trade shows, which is what those numbers suggest. And I do not see how that was possible, but I especially don't see how it was possible because the trade show floor in 2018 and 19 seemingly was a lot larger than what it was in 2023. I mean, not only did you have more exhibitors or more of the larger exhibitors present, but you had companies with much larger booths. The Forged booth was a shadow of what the General Cigar booth once was. Drew Estate, which is coming back for 2024, was not present last year, at least in any sort of meaningful way, on the trade show floor. You had big booths from Davidoff, Perdomo, Ashton that have all shrunk. Davidoff's no longer here, right?
It disappeared, yeah.
Yeah, and so the density sort of question that comes up that oftentimes illustrates why or explains why the show feels so empty is because the booths got a lot larger and the number of people showing up didn't really change. I don't know. But this is part of the problem with attendance. Scan the badges. We'll know exactly how many people were there. There'll be a lot less questions, and I'll be much more apt to believe these numbers, which some of them I know are inaccurate. I don't know about the 2023 number, but I do know that some of those 15, 16, 17, 18 numbers, I would not go to the bank on them. Let's put it that way. All right. Question number 2 is also sort of related to this, which is how does the current state of the market impact PCA 2024? So on the good side, we published data yesterday from the Cigar Association of America, which showed that 2023 was another record-setting year, the third consecutive record-setting year, where in terms of the number of cigars that have been imported into the U.S., it was more or less the same. I think it was like a 0.7% increase over 2022. But again, 2021 was a record-setting year. 2022 beat 2021. 2023 beats 2022. That being said, on the downside, especially at TPE, I heard from a lot of companies that said that their business had slowed, starting in Q4 for a lot of them, but certainly January and February or January was not off to a good start, and February seemed like it was heading in the wrong direction. I suspect that it hasn't really turned around yet in March because there's probably a lot of people waiting to take advantage of those aforementioned show deals. So, mixed bag here. I tend to think that the market has slowed down, but I have said that before, and then the import numbers, set another record. But it does seem like the consumption, at least, has slowed down. What I do know is that if you talk to cigar retailers or cigar manufacturers, they will consistently tell you that there is a lot more inventory in warehouses than there was 18 months ago. And so while there may be more cigars being imported to the U.S., I don't think, I could be wrong about this, I have a feeling that the number of cigars that have been purchased by consumers probably peaked sometime in 2021 or 2022. There was just such a depression in sort of the backstock and inventory that needed to get refilled. It has now been replenished. And another good way for those of you at home to figure out kind of how the market's going, if those big catalog retailers, CI, JR Cigar, Famous, Holtz, Atlantic, Cigar Page, if you see them sending unsolicited emails to you with 25% off coupons or free shipping coupons or whatever, and that's happening multiple times a week from those different retailers, that is a good sign that the business is slow, at least that week. They are not going to send you those coupons when the business is going well, which is why you did not see them in the latter half of 2020 and for a lot of 2021, but we have certainly seen them creep back up a lot in 2023, and it's continued into 2024. Brooks, I know you're really...
Yes.
Dug deep into this data here over the last 65 seconds. So
Indeed, I have.
Your thoughts on the current state of the market and how that might impact attendance or the overall vibe, I guess, at PCA.
Oh, I agree with you 100% on everything you said.
Cool.
No, look, I think that the back stock is being filled. I think certainly I'm not as knowledgeable as you about the situation, but it seems to me that as you said, COVID really put a number on the number of cigars that, so to speak, that were available, and the factories have been trying to fill that back stock, but with all of the cigars that are probably sitting in warehouses now, eventually it's going to get to a point where those cigars have to be sold as well, and there's going to, prices are going to come down perhaps.
The question was, how do you think it's going to play out at PCA?
At PCA, I think that they were going to, yeah, I mean, there's going to be a lot of...
Well, let's just start. Like, do you think that is going to have, do you think that these numbers, let's start with the positive ones, right?
Right.
Do you think that the fact that we had another record-setting year imports, do you think that helps attendance at PCA, hurts attendance at PCA? Because the main takeaway at TPE was the retail attendance was down, and it seemed like the reason why the retail attendance was down was because those retailers did not need to buy cigars. I think
that's exactly right. I think that it will have an impact with all those cigars that are sitting in those warehouses and at stores that are, that have come in. Will definitely have an impact on the number of retailers who come and actually buy cigars at the show. 100%. Yeah.
All right. Have you gotten any sense from the manufacturers that you have spoken to ahead of the show that because of the inventory that you think is sitting in warehouses, that they are maybe not introducing new products because they've got plenty of shit to sell already?
I think that's part of it. I do think that there are other issues in that regard as well. I don't think it's
mainly like the condensed timeline between
right, and I think we're going to go over that, aren't we? But yeah, I mean the condensed timeline is certainly the larger problem, I think, for most of the manufacturers I talk to. The idea that they don't have as much time to necessarily to necessarily release or get all of these products ready for the show. Now, as you mentioned yesterday in our walkthrough, the idea that these larger cigar companies like Rocky Patel or Drew Estate or somebody of that nature, they're probably not going to have as many problems. But somebody like HVC or whoever, these medium to small, manufacturers, they are probably going to run into issues. And certainly I've heard that they have run into issues getting product done, getting packaging done.
Not necessarily about HVC.
No, just in smaller.
Although HVC is an interesting case here. So one of the new products they announced is they don't intend on shipping apparently until the summer. So that is an example of a small change you might see, I guess, here. But it is what it is. It is going to be curious. The narrative at TPE, as I wrote about then, was that retailers were not there because they didn't need inventory. And the reason why it was pretty clear they didn't need inventory is because I was talking to companies, especially the larger companies, and I said, hey, when you guys are offering your TPE deals to retailers that aren't even here at TPE, what's happening? And they were telling me that they were consistently not getting retailers to take them up on those deals, which said those retailers did need inventory, because if they needed inventory, they would have bought it at a discount, or they would have bought it regardless. But I think a lot of them are loaded up. There's, the sort of overall larger pre-COVID discussion that took place about moving this trade show. One of the things that would always come up as a reason as to why you didn't want to do it in the first part of the year was because a lot of retailers, depending on the state, they have to pay, obviously federal taxes are due quarterly, or some people wait till April or whatever, right? But a lot of the state taxes aren't due until the end of the year, the beginning of the next year, and so they have to pay out the state right in the first part of the year in January. And that means that sort of cash flow wise, it's a little bit depressed at the beginning of the year, as opposed to in July, where they've had plenty of time to get through whatever tax payments they had to make, as well as they've had a couple of war months, because those retailers you talked about in the north, one of the problems they're going to have if they don't manage their cash flow well is that they're not selling as many cigars right now. They came off a holiday, which should be good, but a lot of that holiday money goes to paying that stuff, paying taxes, paying for vacations. But January and February, not great months in terms of cigar sales when you're in cold climates, and so it is going to be curious to see how much cash they have to spend now. And to be clear, for those of you that aren't part of the process, it's not like when you go and you place the order, it's like McDonald's where you swipe your credit card and then the order gets placed. Most of these orders have terms. A lot of these orders aren't going to ship for many weeks, many months, etc. So it's not like you necessarily need to have the cash on hand, but it has always been a concern, and it's going to be interesting to see how it plays out here. All right. I think a question that we are probably more qualified to talk about than how the retail economy works here in the U.S. Will there be as many new products? Brooks, I think we sort of hinted about it, but there is. This has been a big question. I don't think it's that difficult to answer, but we'll see if you can get it right. Not sure. It is
well, it is an opinion, right?
Well, no. I mean, we can track this stuff. I don't know how much effort I will put into tracking it if the answer is quite obvious. But the short of it is we think there will be fewer new products because of the condensed timeline. It's a lot more complicated than just this trade show is normally in July. Now it's in March. That's 3 fewer months. For people that are trying to get packaging out of China, and a lot of cigar boxes are made in China, that can be very difficult because of Chinese New Year, which shuts down a lot of these factories for basically a month. That will also affect a lot of the cigar accessory companies. If they didn't have their stuff figured out sort of by the middle of January, end of January, could be tough there. As I mentioned with HVC, we've seen some companies announce new products and say they're not shipping them until the summer, which isn't all that uncommon. But Brooks, you're pretty convinced there's going to be fewer new products?
Absolutely. There will be fewer new products than in past years. Absolutely. 100%.
All right. Do you want to take a stab at John's question here on the screen?
What's this? How many of them will be available for quarter 3? I mean, I have no idea. But if I had to guess, I'd say probably 60%. Ish.
Yeah.
Before quarter 3, yeah.
I'd take a little bit fewer than 60. I'd probably say half.
I thought that was kind of a cheap, to say half.
Yeah, or maybe even fewer than half. I think it also
47%.
Kind of depends on how you want to. Like, some of these companies are going to announce all of what they have for the rest of the year. Almost sort of similar to what a company like Arturo Fuente typically does at the trade show, where it's like, hey, we're going to show you all these things, and these things may not ship for many years. But
you may never get them.
Eye of the Bull eventually got released, right? But that is the intent. I think the question right now is, of the products that are trying to be released. I don't know. I feel like there will be a decent chunk of them that will show up before July 1st, and then there's going to be some of them that aren't on sale until 2026. We'll go ahead and deal with Eric's question right now. He asks, do you think companies held back new products last year in preparation for the earlier show this year? Yes, I do think that some companies, this is not uncommon, right, planned on releasing, let's say I had Charlie's Cigar Company. I plan on releasing the Charlie Grand Reserva, and I wanted to do that in September of 2023. Something happened.
I'd smoke that.
Whatever went on, right? And then it's like, okay, well, now this thing is ready to ship, and it's the week of Thanksgiving. My general advice to cigar companies is don't ship anything the week of Thanksgiving for any number of reasons. It's the end of the year, holiday season. A lot of cigar factories shut down. A lot of cigar warehouses shut down for a couple weeks because of the holidays. Retailers don't necessarily want to be seeing new inventory show up, especially new product launches, unless it's like something really special. I'm sure plenty of them would have loved to have padded their 2023 numbers with, say, the Arturo Fuente Padron Legends collaboration. Had that shown up as intended by the end of the year. But for the most part, end of the year is not the best time to be introducing a new line. What I can also tell you, Eric, is that I know from at least one company, one very prominent cigar company, they told me last year they were planning the 2023 and 2024 trade shows simultaneously. They said it was close enough that when they were talking with their booth people, when they were talking with the factories about new products, the packaging people, the marketing team, etc., they said, hey, let's go ahead and just plan the whole roadmap from PCA 2023 in July of 23 through March of 24. And I think that makes sense. And a lot of companies, to be quite honest, they do like 12-month forecasting like normal. And so some of this may have kind of gotten taken care of anyways.
But that was a fairly large company, right?
Yeah, but I think that even for the smaller companies, I think that most of them have to do pretty substantial planning. It's not like they can expect that they just, especially if they don't have their own factory, that they just go down to, Esteli, or they go to the Santiago, they blend a cigar the first week of December, and then they go in Illustrator, design the packaging the second week of December, and then just ship it off, and that all of a sudden that product will be available by the end of January. That is an optimistic viewpoint of the world, especially for the people that have been doing this for a little while. They understand that, like, when you talk to a company like Cigar Rings, which makes a lot of the cigar bands that go on cigars, Cigar Rings is having a hell of a time right now. Every year before the trade show, they are getting rush order to try to get sample bands made so that cigar companies give out samples to retailers at the trade show. Same thing goes with the factories, etc. And I think you've also seen it, right? Like, you've seen companies, especially bigger companies, now say, look, we're not going to announce products unless we have them in stock, ready to ship, because there's so much that can go wrong. And now we'll just have someone take a shot at Dunbarton here for hacking the consensus. Yeah. All right. So I alluded to it earlier. In 2019, 4 of the largest cigar companies, Altadis USA, which sells the non-Cuban Monte Cristo, Romeo y Julieta, H. Jutman, and others. General Cigar Company, which sells Macanudo, CAO, now Alec Bradley, Room 101, as well as the non-Cuban Cohiba, Partagas, Hoyt de Monterrey, and then some. Davidoff, which sells Davidoff, Camacho, Avo, Zeno, Cusano, etc., as well as Drew Estate announced, which sells products like Liga Privada, Acid, her Esteli, the blackened cigars, a bunch of other things. And I believe now is the largest cigar company, or at least largest non-Cuban cigar company by volume. That seems to be at least what Drew Estate's competitors think, is that Drew Estate's making more cigars than anyone else. Drew Estate has not been at the trade show since 2019 as an exhibitor. They're coming back for the first time this year in 2024. I'm curious to know, as someone that covered the Drew Estate booth for many years, Brooks, how do you think this is going to impact it? Because I think that I think it's a big deal. I'm a little bit surprised it's not a bigger deal, and I'm a bit surprised that Drew Estate hasn't made it a bigger deal, if I'm being honest.
I'm with you on that. I think I would have thought that they would make a bigger deal out of returning than what I've seen. I think the music will be better on the show floor, so there's that. In terms of the actual, in terms of how it's actually going to affect the trade show for the people on the actual floor, I'm not sure that there's that much of a difference, except for the number of products that they can actually buy on the, from the company. But I think that it does point to the fact that 3 of the 4 companies that did leave have now returned, and I think that's a point in the direction of for PCA being able to say, listen, this is becoming it's getting back to where it was, kind of thing. as opposed to going in a downward way, like it like people thought when the 4 dropped out.
I have no idea what you're saying.
Yeah.
I do think there's one
Yeah.
part where there's a potential negative impact for this. If you are a smaller, newer exhibitor, so smaller company, newer company, Drew Estate coming back is probably not good for you because most of the retailers that show up to this trade show are going to go stop in the Drew Estate booth and spend some time there because most of them sell Drew Estate's products and are going to want to take advantage of the discounts. They're going to want to place their orders for the new products, whatever, right? They're going to want to get their free swag, whatever it is. Drew Estate historically, I don't know if they're going to do it this year, historically has given away sort of custom painted items, whether it's sneakers, skateboard decks, spray paint cans, construction hats. Typically, they've had that as an incentive for retailers to stop by the booth, place an order, etc. If you're a smaller, newer company, you have to sort of think about it and say, hypothetical, Brooks is a retailer, right? He's going to only be on the trade show floor days 1 and days 2. That's pretty standard, right? He's got less than 15 hours where he's actually going to be on the show floor, like walking around or present. And that's assuming he's basically there for the full days, both days 1 and days 2. Well, if you've only got 15 hours on the show floor, Drew Estate coming back is probably going to take one of those hours. Whereas last year, Drew Estate was not one of those hours because Drew Estate was not there. And so that's one less hour for you to go meander around the trade show floor aimlessly and potentially run into someone's booth and place an order. And so I do think that there is an impact to be had there where they will, eat sort of a big chunk of time collectively of the retailers. And that would be the same thing if Davidoff returned. I imagine it will be a similar story this year with General, who's back as General Cigar Company as opposed to Ford Cigar Company. I don't really need to explain that, but I do think there's going to be some time that gets spent in General that may have not been being spent there the last couple of years, but certainly with Drew Estate and sort of the just this sort of circus that Drew Estate is and invites you to be a part of. They invest in these trade shows more than just about any other company, and they typically have a busy booth because of that. All right. So now we have something where we are going to have I think a pretty easy number. We probably need to write this down because the other thing we're going to do is on the Friday show after the trade show, that March 29th show, we are going to revisit these questions. So let me get a piece of paper and a pen to write down our predictions.
Aren't they on the video? I mean, we could just go back and...
Do you want me to assign you to rewatch this video?
I know what I'm going to say.
Are you going to remember what you're going to say
Sure.
10 days from now?
Sure.
Or however
Maybe.
long. That would be a no for the audience watching at home. All right, so how many 100-ish, we'll call it, right? So let's, just for the purpose of this, we'll say $90+ cigars. Anything that starts with a 90. Are we going to have a PCA 2024? I believe we already have 2 that have been announced. There is the El Septimo Vartan the Dragon, which I believe is $98. We were told different numbers for this thing, but I think it's $98. And there's also this $150 Monte Cristo 1935. I believe it has not been written about, I don't think, by anyone, but it certainly was the talk last year. You covered the Plasencia booth last year, right?
I did.
They did not mention to you that they had a high-priced cigar?
They did not.
They did mention it to a bunch of retailers, apparently. So Plasencia also has another cigar in this sort of price range in the works. So we'll guess that will also be here, right? I think is a safe assumption. So it seems like we already probably have 3 that will be new $100+ cigars or $100-ish cigars on display. Brooks, your official prediction for how many we are going to have in total?
I'm going to go with 4.
Okay.
4 total with the Plasencia.
Yesterday when we did this, I took 3 because I felt like 4 was actually the best guess, and I still think 4 is the best guess. But now that I know that the Plasencia exists, I'm going to take 5. I do think that there will be, I think 4 to 6 is the safe range, and I will take 5. It'd be hilarious if you show up to the Saka booth and he's like, I fucking hate Lancero so much. This Lancero sampler is $100 a piece. Although he may have announced pricing for that thing, so it's not that.
No, it's $139.
Oh, there's always time to change.
$139.99.
Lanceros don't sell anyway. You might as well get what you can.
It's true.
All right. So Brooks takes 4. I take 5. We'll see how many $100+ cigars is. Unfortunately, I don't think that trend's ending. There's really nothing you can do about it. It's not one of those scenarios where
Except not buy them, I guess.
Well, but here's the problem: if you don't buy them, other people will, I think is what we've kind of learned here. I do think that some of them won't sell, but it's lucrative enough for these retailers to take a gamble that they can try to sell more than half of what they buy of these $100+ cigars. And I'll never forget the story. I remember when the Davidoff Oro Blanco, which is a $500 or $600 cigar that I think Davidoff is probably going to bring back or do a different version of at some point in the near future. I remember when that cigar came out many years ago, and it obviously got a lot of criticism for its price point, rightfully so. It's a $500 cigar. And I remember talking to Jeff Borshwitz of Corona Cigar Company, and Jeff told me, he said that once a day, at the time I think Corona had 3 stores, but he said once a day at one of my stores, somebody will come in and they will ask what the most expensive cigar is, and about half the time they will buy it, whatever it is. And he's like, that's why we carry Gurkhas His Majesty Reserve. That's why we're excited about the Davidoff Oro Blanco. He said, it is a thing that happens. It's not my core customers. It's not the guys that are buying, locker memberships, right? It's not the guys that are coming in for every single event, but just random people throughout the day, without fail, once a day, someone will ask for it, and there's a decent chance that they buy it. And I've certainly been in humidors here in Dallas and seen that scenario play out where some random person just walks in and says, hey, what's the most expensive cigar you got? And they're like, I got this $85 cigar. And if you had the $100 cigar, chances are that retailer could have made an extra $15 there, because the person buying the $85 cigar probably does not care what it is. They care about how much it costs. So with that said, let's see if I know we already took some questions, but if you have them and you're on Facebook or YouTube, ask away and we will get to them. Let's see.
You going to write down that Alan Rubin says there'd be 6 cigars over $100?
No, I'm not. This wasn't the audience participation on the guess of how many $100 cigars there's going to be. Actually, there will be no questions and answers because Brooks needs to head to the door.
Oh.
And that will probably be the end of the show. So,
bye, I guess.
Yeah, I can take you off the screen. As was mentioned, hopefully Brooks doesn't fall down in the process here. As was mentioned, we're going to have 2 more shows. One will be on March 19th, which is, I believe, on Tuesday. We're going to talk about the 10 products we are looking forward to. And then we will have our final show on March 29th, 2024, which will be the Friday after the trade show. I will take, I guess, the questions. I guess I'm going to talk over Brooks anyway, so here we go. Bear wants to know, which company is in desperate need of a stellar show? Ooh, that is a good question, Bear. I mean, I think the obvious answer is the PCA, right? Like, they need to show that this move in date was a good idea. I think that is the most important thing for anybody at play here. I suspect you are more asking about a cigar company. I don't know. I don't think I'm trying to go through like the large players, like so Altadas, not really. Drew Estate, not really. General, not really. Fuente, not really. Newman, not really. Ashton, not really. Rocky, don't think so. My Father, Taguaje, like. The reality is that the cigar market's been hot for the last couple of years, so I don't think that stands out to me. I think that I would more look towards like the Freud tier, right, of companies that have launched in the last 5 years that are smaller, and it's a question of kind of like, are you going to graduate to the next level? Like, are you going to have some longevity here? That one stands out to me as one that I would say, hey, like, we either gotta show that we're on the right course, and maybe they are. I don't necessarily see it, at least from my perspective. But if you want to be in here for the long haul, like, you got to get some legs underneath you and really build that foundation. Michael wants to know, are the shows the same time? They are. At the same time. John McTavish wants to know, will any member of the Half Wheel make an appearance at the media compound? Well, historically, we don't get invited to the Developing Palates, Cigar Coop. I don't know who else is involved, Cigar Dojo media compound, so that's why we don't show up. But probably not. But maybe this year will be a different year for Half Wheel, so there's always a chance. Again, all shows 12 p.m. Central Daylight Savings Time. They'll be on our Facebook, YouTube pages, as well as on Instagram. Again, if you're on Instagram, I cannot see your comments, but we appreciate them nonetheless. I will give you guys some forewarning here. The Rocky Patel ad that we are about to play is can be quite loud, so if you're listening on headphones, I would recommend turning down the volume. Thank you guys for tuning in. Thank you, Rocky Patel, for sponsoring the pre-show coverage here at Half Wheel. It is a lot of work. A lot of resources are involved with it. And so we're very thankful that the companies are willing to spend some extra money to put their name beside it, because it certainly gives us the ability to be able to invest in things like this, as trivial as they might seem. So, final warning for your headphones. Thank you guys for tuning in. Have a great weekend, and Brooks and I will see you back here on Tuesday. There'll be plenty more going on in terms of PCA 2024 new cigar and cigar accessory launches. You can always check out halfwheel.com for that.